It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Looking for stateside support, Volodymyr Zelensky lays out his expectations on the eve of his meeting with Donald Trump.
We need the United States on our side, and I think that President Trump shared that we will need peace, but steps to this peace. We need, correct steps to have lasting peace.
A raft of European leaders will accompany the Ukrainian president as he returns to the Oval Office, also tonight. Protests and arrests in Israel as thousands stage a day of civil disobedience, blocking traffic and causing disruption.
People can say, we want to stop this war, make it end, bring the hostages home, stop the war.
Naysayers, British horse racing to go on strike for the first time ever in protest against government tax plans. The actor Terrence Stamp, best known for his villainous role in the original Superman films, dies at the age of 87. Man United's new-look frontline fire a blank against Arsenal, who run out winners at Old Trafford. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Volodymyr Zelensky's European allies have been lining up to form a ring of support around him ahead of crunch talks with Donald Trump tomorrow. The so-called Coalition of the Willing held a virtual meeting earlier in which they emphasised that stopping the killing in Ukraine is a priority in the peace talks. One by one, European leaders confirmed they joined the Ukrainian president on his trip to the White House, keen to avoid a repeat of his last encounter with his US counterpart in the Oval Office. But it's US-Russian calls for Ukraine to give up land which are causing the deepest concern. Vladimir Putin deployed troops to illegally annex the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. In February 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and in September, Kyiv retook large areas of the Kharkiv region. Since 2024, the front line has remained largely static, with Russian forces concentrating efforts in the eastern Donbass area. Russia controls much of the region, but Ukraine has strong defensive positions in cities such as Kramatorsk. Putin is reported to have demanded Russia take control of the entire Donbass, and in exchange, he's offered to freeze the southern front line. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian officials say President Zelensky feels stabbed in the back, betrayed by America. He is desperately trying to shore up support among other allies. In Brussels, en route to Washington, he rejected Russian and now possibly US calls. He gives up land his enemy hasn't yet captured.
We need real negotiations, which means they can start where the front line is now. The contact line is the best line for talking.
European leaders are scrambling to respond and salvage what's left of Allied unity against Russia's invasion.
President Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire?
Far from confronting Putin in Alaska, Donald Trump has now, it seems, aligned himself with the Russian leader's demands, dropping his call for an immediate ceasefire and supporting the surrender of Ukrainian territory. President Zelensky will now fly to Washington with an escort of no less than 6 European leaders and the head of NATO to meet with President Trump.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
They hope to avert a repeat of the disastrous scenes in the Oval Office in February, when Donald Trump and his vice president rounded on President Zelensky. In the very difficult diplomacy ahead, Ukrainians will be making one demand above all: the need for security guarantees. Because if this war can be brought to an end, they must be confident that Putin can't come back and take even more of their land in future. But it's US-Russian calls for Ukraine to give up land, causing the deepest concern here. Ukrainians have been at war trying to keep the Donbass in eastern Ukraine since 2014. They fought some of their fiercest battles, defending territory they're now being told to surrender. In Kyiv, civilians watch a film showing the battle in one town in the Donbass. Andriy Poluhin has been fighting Russians there on and off for a decade. He says Putin's claim he wants to end the war and the killing cannot be trusted.
It's lie. It's lie where Trump believes it. It's obviously a lie. I think it's not only my thoughts or our society, Ukrainian ones. Everybody who deal with Russia understand it, just lie.
But on Trump's team, there is a readiness to believe the Russians. His negotiator Steve Witkoff was hinting Ukraine will be asked to give up land in return for the Russian promise of peace.
The Russians made some concessions at the table with regard to all 5 of those regions. There is an important discussion to be had with regard to Donetsk and what would happen there. And that discussion is going to specifically be detailed on Monday.
Will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
Ukraine fears a deal stitched up between Russia's leader and his ally in the White House will be presented as an ultimatum. That could stretch the alliance against Putin to breaking point. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News, Kyiv.
Sir Keir Starmer has hailed Volodymyr Zelensky's desire for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, amid worries a Russian land grab could result from negotiations to end the war. As we've been hearing, he and 7 other European leaders will join the Ukrainian president tomorrow as he returns to Washington for the first time since February. Our political correspondent Liz Bates reports.
Europe is united and preparing to take on not an enemy, but an ally, the US.
The second objective is to strategize together to prepare the visit of Volodymyr tomorrow in Washington, D.C. Some of us will be with Volodymyr.
This was the latest meeting of the Coalition of the Willing. European and other world leaders prepared to commit military support to protect Ukraine, hastily convened ahead of the main event in Washington.
The objective of this meeting very clearly is as well to be completely clear about the security guarantees we want, the next steps, and how to organize the next meetings with President Putin, Ukraine, US and Europeans.
But will all of this strategizing prevent a repeat of this, the now infamous Trump-Zelensky showdown in the Oval Office that shocked the world? This time, though, the Ukrainian president has backup.
International borders cannot be changed by force. These are decisions to be made by Ukraine and Ukraine alone. And these decisions cannot be taken without Ukraine at the table.
After the invitation went out, the attendee list grew. Joining him will be the EU President, the NATO Secretary-General, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and leaders from Germany, France, Italy, Sweden and Finland.
This is a dramatic move, and I'm impressed that they've all changed their diaries and made time to do it. But it reflects the fact that, I think of deep worry that on Friday in Alaska, Trump nearly gave the game away to Putin.
But will anything convince this man to change course? Donald Trump, after causing a diplomatic storm, remains remarkably calm, heading to the golf course as the world waits for his next move.
Well, Liz is in Downing Street for us, and our US correspondent James Matthews is in Washington, D.C. To you, first of all, Liz, this European backup for Zelensky, was it always on the cards?
It wasn't always on the cards, and that is something that European leaders have been pushing for a long time, and no doubt that will be top of the agenda tomorrow. But look, I think it's worth stepping back today and just noting how different the relationship now is between European leaders and the US. I thought it was a really bizarre spectacle to watch European leaders in that meeting of the Coalition of the Willing today, preparing for, strategising, almost bracing themselves for a meeting with the US president, who in recent history has been an ally, a friend, someone who has always stood firm beside European leaders. And now there is this, instead of solidarity, a growing separation. So I think that really came across very strongly today. And the other slightly odd thing, of course, is that President Zelensky feels like, and obviously European leaders feel like this as well, that he needs to be flanked as he goes over to the White House. He needs moral support, if you like, or even protection from the US president, who we know last time round was pretty hostile towards him, and I think he felt pretty ambushed. And so, again, a very odd dynamic that has emerged throughout the day, and I think it just shows how different the US administration is under Donald Trump because of his worldview. But, of course, there's also a big wedge now between them in the shape of President Putin. And I think that's the biggest challenge, and European leaders were pretty open in acknowledging that today. I think they almost at times were suggesting that they needed to remind President Trump that he really is an ally of Europe in all of this. I think what also came across very clearly is that there are really two things at the top of their agenda. They want to get that US security guarantee, and quite simply they want to put President Zelensky right back in the centre of this process, which at the end of the day is about the future of his own country. There was also a bit of chaos, I think, behind the scenes today. All felt a bit disorganised and last minute. European leaders, including the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, dropping everything to rush over to Washington, really putting everything into this meeting, hoping that it will come good in the end. But of course, they know, as we all know, that with this US president involved, the outcome is, as ever, completely unpredictable.
And James, to you in Washington, how much do we know about the choreography of this meeting? Who will be in the room with Zelensky and President Trump?
Hi, Gillian. Yeah, it's still to be confirmed, actually, that list of personnel, but the numbers are key. The unity is key. That's why we have Team Europe descending on the White House. As Liz was saying there has been a handbrake turn on their part on the back of what happened in Alaska. They will have been aghast at the spectacle they saw of President Putin presenting himself as an old friend, emphasising friendship, the shared history between Moscow and Washington, D.C., a message that Donald Trump seemed to buy. I think the message tomorrow, rammed home, will be, look, this guy is very much your enemy, not your friend. And I think this business of unity and the numbers turning up on at the White House, clearly it is designed so that President Zelensky is not isolated. That's what Putin seems to have successfully done in terms of talking bigger picture, business opportunities and so on, almost marginalising Ukraine as an issue. I think the message amplified by the numbers tomorrow will be to Donald Trump, look, this man's cause is our cause. And if legacy matters to you, then the safety of Europe is our priority and should be yours. In terms of room for movement, I think the indications today, Gillian, are that there might well be room for manoeuvre. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who was in the room with Trump and Putin, he was saying on one of the Sunday shows that a ceasefire is not off the table. They will like to hear that in Kyiv and European capitals, but he did say that the overall peace agreement is what they are after. So room for manoeuvre and some encouragement for the European countries today, but they will be looking to exploit the president's pliability here in Washington, D.C., acutely aware, as was demonstrated in Alaska, that he is a man, who carries the message delivered by the last voice in his ear. Currently, that's Putin. They want to turn that round tomorrow.
James and Liz, thank you both. Thousands of people have taken part in a nationwide strike in Israel calling for an end to the war in Gaza and the release of all the hostages still held there. Israeli police said they detained 38 people as protesters blocked highways and marched through the streets. Our international correspondent Diana Magnay reports.
Police in Jerusalem drag protesters off the street after dousing them with water cannon. Dozens of arrests across Israel this Sunday in a nationwide day of protest. You can see the black smoke in the distance where they've blocked the road. It's another one of these acts of a civil initiative, they're calling it, but basically it's a whole series of civil disturbances all the way around the country on this day of stoppage, blocking roads, blocking traffic, causing obstruction, so that people can say, we want to stop this war, make it end, bring the hostages home, stop the war. It's almost like a flash mob demonstration. Protesters here long enough to make their mark, and then they move on again to the next location before the police get heavy-handed.
We want the war to end. We want our hostages back. We want our soldiers back safe home. And we want the humanitarian disaster in Gaza to end. We do not want to have these crimes made in our name.
For all the outrage, though, it is the same old story. Benjamin Netanyahu determined to press on regardless, ramp up the fight in Gaza and ignore the sentiment on the street.
Those who are calling for an end to the war today without defeating Hamas are not only hardening Hamas's stance and delaying the release of our hostages, they are also ensuring that the horrors of October the 7th will recur again and again.
You cannot eliminate a terror organization to the last person. So, from my point of view, this is eternal war.
This former Air Force reservist wants to be known just by the call sign F. He used to be responsible for coordinating airstrikes on targets in Gaza, but he quit in protest and fears that Netanyahu is leading his troops into a death trap.
There have been so many Palestinians killed. How does that make you feel? Because these strikes are clearly not surgical. However much you may try, they are not.
The uninvolved death toll is tough. It's tough personally, it's tough emotionally, it's tough professionally. It shouldn't happen. When you conduct a war at this scale, it will happen. It will happen even if you don't want it. It will happen because of mistakes, because of the chaos in war. My view is a child is a child. You probably read the papers. There's a soldier committing suicide once a week in Israel. Silent victims of that same horror thing that we are at. Soldiers are being killed in Gaza. And for what? The war should have stopped months ago.
But the war is not stopping. Huge airstrikes continuing in Zaytun, east of Gaza City. And Israel's chief of staff visiting his commanders in Gaza to outline the next steps in the plan, despite his reported reluctance to commit to the battle ahead. And on the ground, the relentless horror of death, destruction, displacement. A cycle with no end in sight. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Jerusalem.
3 men have been arrested in connection to a murder in Romford. Police launched an investigation yesterday after a woman was assaulted in the early hours of the morning. She was pronounced dead at the scene. An 11-year-old girl has died after an incident in a river in Cornwall. Emergency services were called to Wacker Quay near Torpoint last night, following concerns for a person in the water. Police say the girl from South Devon was recovered and given emergency treatment, but was confirmed dead at the scene. Air Canada has suspended plans to restart flights today after cabin crew defied a government return-to-work order. The union says flight attendants, who are calling for higher salaries, will continue their walkout and challenge the order, which it calls unconstitutional. The strike action, which started on Saturday, has left more than 100,000 travellers stranded. For the first time in British horse racing history, those involved in the sport are set to take part in a nationwide strike. The 4 meets that are due to take part across the country on September the 10th will all be cancelled in protest at a planned rise in betting tax. And as Katerina Vitozzi reports, the strike will cost the industry hundreds of thousands of pounds.
It's the so-called sport of kings that's never voluntarily refused to race. It's why calling off meets at 4 courses is so significant as the sport unites against a proposed betting tax hike.
We're the second most attended sport in Britain. We are part of rural communities right up and down the country. We're an employer of around 85,000 people across the nation. So in addition to that, we generate significant revenue for Treasury.
The Treasury is suggesting a rise in tax on online bookmakers' profits from horse racing bets and other online sports betting. This would go up from 15 to 21%, in line with tax for online slot and casino games. Economic analysis commissioned by the British Horse Racing Authority estimated the tax hike would result in a £330 million loss in revenue to the industry in its first 5 years and put more than 2,500 jobs at risk in the first year alone. Horse racing bodies say there is a difference in betting on a horse race and online games of chance, and they shouldn't be taxed the same.
There's a difference between live sports such as horse racing and slots and casinos. We employ a lot of people versus what's an automated product that will employ a significantly less amount of people.
The no race day won't affect the course here at Pontefract, but those that work in or just love this sport feel the government proposal won't work.
Here's probably the cheapest we've been to, and it's
time.
quite local, so if it were to affect that, then yeah, it probably would have a massive effect on the races.
Today when families are coming, it is, expensive to go on any day out, so to make something like this is normally quite cheap and quite accessible.
It was the previous Conservative government who first suggested changing tax on horse race betting, but it is this government who's been trying to push it through. The Chancellor's tax headaches have been well reported as this government tries to plug holes in public finances whilst maintaining its manifesto promises not to increase tax on working people. But today the Treasury told us this isn't about money. We are consulting on bringing the treatment of online betting in line with other forms of online gambling to cut down bureaucracy. It is not about increasing or decreasing rates, and we welcome views from all stakeholders, including businesses, trade bodies, the third sector and individuals. The race strike day is due on the 10th of September, a month or so ahead of the autumn budget, where those here will find out their fate. Catherine Rivatozzi, Sky News in Pontefract.
The actor Terrence Stamp, best known for his role as Superman villain General Zod, has died at the age of 87. The Oscar-nominated actor starred in a range of films, including The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. His family says he leaves behind an extraordinary body of work that they hope will inspire people for years to come. Emma Birchley reports.
Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
From supervillain as General Zod.
These humans are beginning to bore me.
In the 1978 smash hit Superman and its sequel.
One more push, I'm going to smack his face so hard he'll have to stick his toothbrush up his to clean his teeth.
To a quick-witted and compassionate trans woman in The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Terrence Stamp was certainly an actor with versatility. In the late 60s, he was even considered for the role of James Bond, his handsome charm evident, meeting the Queen Mother at a royal premiere.
This is Terrence Stamp.
Stamp's career took off in 1962 in Billy Budd, his performance earning him a Golden Globe nomination for Most Promising Newcomer.
You do forgive me, don't you?
Before starring alongside Julie Christie in Far From the Madding Crowd, their on-screen romance blossoming to make them one of the most glamorous couples of the time. But it wasn't long before he was looking for a new path.
In the 1960s, when the rules started to tail off, he went off to teach himself yoga in India, but came straight back when he got a telegram addressed not to Terrence but to Lawrence Stamp, asking and inviting him if he'd like to play the villain in a new Superman movie, and he was on the next plane.
It was to be the role that would bring him the most fame.
I can't go out in the street in London without somebody saying it's Zod, you know.
Stamp was born in London's East End in 1938, but on Sunday morning he died at the age of 87, leaving behind, his family said, an extraordinary body of work, both as an actor and as a writer.
You're going to have to be more specific, love.
An Oscar-nominated star who graced the big screen for 6 decades. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
The UK's fishing industry has taken a hit in recent years, with the workforce almost half of what it was 3 decades ago. There are also fears the government's latest deal with the EU could cause further harm. Fortunately, a growing number of young people are eager to pursue a career at sea, as Dan Whitehead reports from Cornwall.
Round both sides. Okay. Right. Like that.
Learning the ropes before heading out to sea.
After this 10-day intensive course in Newlyn, the next generation of fishermen will be qualified to join a crew. In an industry where the average age is 55, fresh sea legs are desperately needed.
I'm not from a fishing family or nothing. I just like a challenge. So I was a grounds worker for a while. Obviously, I put that on hold to see if I can do this. It makes you feel good, you know, doing a hard job. And obviously, that's I think what's getting lost nowadays. People want an easy job, easy money.
It's just always been a hobby since I was at a young age. Loved it ever since.
It's one of sort of the last jobs that is a bit like being a hunter-gatherer, really. Everything else is really sort of industrialised.
The number of fishermen in the UK has fallen dramatically. In 1995, there were around 20,000 fishermen working off our shores. Fast forward nearly 3 decades and that number is around 10,000, a fall of 48%.
2, 1, man overboard.
It's why getting new fishers on board is crucial, following big decisions in Westminster. While they train up, international politics hangs over the future of fishing. There are many in the industry who feel that the Prime Minister's post-Brexit deal with the EU has thrown them under the bus and will hamper the next generation as they head out to sea. The agreement in May guaranteed EU boats access to UK waters for another 12 years.
For new people getting into the industry, it's the area that they can reach in the sorts of small boats that new starters tend to work in. They're increasingly pressured in that space, and by keeping all of those European boats having access to it for free, for nothing, that puts them under even more pressure.
So this is the wheelhouse. This is where we spend our evenings.
29-year-old skipper Tom helped set up the Young Fishermen's Network, a group that supports new entrants.
You know, there's never been a sort of collective for fishermen or young fishermen, shall I say, from a youngster coming into the fishing industry to be sort of part of that, knowing there's other youngsters coming in the same position, they can sort of chat to one another, and it's pretty cool, really.
The government says it'll always back British fishing and has announced a £360 million fund to support it. Ultimately, it will be down to this new wave of fishermen, though, to ensure the industry stays afloat. Dan Whitehead, Sky News, in Newlyn, Cornwall.
Time now to catch up on all of the sports news with Joe.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Manchester United fans look likely to see a lot more of their new American goalkeeper over the course of the coming season. His new manager is already happy to contemplate playing Tim Howard as his first choice.
Well, I think the important thing is that Tim will be given the opportunity.
People who love soccer there in America can't fathom what Manchester United is really all about.
There was probably too many mistakes in all of them, whereas they hadn't been used to that with Schmeichel. Whether the pressure was too much for them, whether what was in front of them wasn't as good as it had been, it's hard to know, but there were poisoned chalice at the time.
In the beginning it wasn't really that important because they still won the next Premier League. It was only at some point where it began to be a problem where you think, you know, to win that trophy you need strong people in every position. The brief for the Man United goalkeeper is always to win 10 to 11 points. These are not my words, these are the manager's words.
It was a massive task to fill his void, and I think they felt the weight of that on the shoulders because everyone was compared to Peter.
I was actually on the brink also in '99 when I signed for Juventus. I think we had a more or less verbal agreement. I got a call from Manchester if I wanted to come over the next day. And at that time was still, I think, before they won the Champions League. I was already done and dusted with Juventus, so that's why I signed there and didn't really expect, to be fair, to come to that level again at such a late stage in my career.
When I was out socially, I was getting a little bit of stick from United's fans saying, how come he's in here and how come he's in there? And I don't want to go into names because it's not fair. But I went to Sir Alex and I said, listen, if we're going to bring a goalkeeper in, let me decide who it is. And he looked at me and he went, are you sure? And I went, Well, I'm positive. I can say I'm the one that gets all the stick out there when I go for a pint. I went, so let it be on my shoulders. And he went, right, I'll leave it with you then.
It is a bitterly cold evening at Craven Cottage, but in recent times Fulham have had results to warm the spirit against Manchester United.
I've known about Edwin for a long, long time. In fact, when I was at Sunderland, he was in the Ajax team that come and opened the Stadium of Light. I'd watched every game that he'd played for Holland. I watched his move when he went to Juventus, and then he came to Fulham, and I always thought, no disrespect to Fulham, but I always thought he was bigger than Fulham. Go into the manager's office after a game and speak with their staff and either say well done or hard luck or whatever. Chris Coleman was in there and his staff, and obviously the goalkeeping coaches or ex-goalkeepers gravitate to each other. So me and Dave Besant are having a beer and having a chat, and I just asked him outright, I said, what's Edwin van der Sar like to work with on a daily basis? And it was...
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. When we come back, I'll be joined by columnist Yasmin Alibi-Brown and broadcaster Lucy Beresford. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Financial Times. Their headline, Zelensky and European allies seek security guarantees in Trump talks. We will be right back. Do stay with us.